Welcome to the Word, Torah study for the uninitiated, uninspired, and quite possibly the unhinged. You fit any of these words, then you are definitely in need of the Word. And what do we do here exactly? Well, that's a good question. We attempt to extract wisdom from the Torah. Yes, God's holy book. Please don't click off. Yeah, I know. That sounds so 3,000 years ago, or maybe like 30 years ago on the 700 Club. Look, but the book is still here, waiting to be cracked open. But somehow, learning Torah in today's world seems so out of place. I haven't seen any numbers, but it wouldn't be surprising if more people believe in the Force in Star Wars than God in the Bible. And then you call them out on it. Oh, no, it's good. And they'll say, oh, yeah, but look at all the wars that religion caused. Hey, what about the Force? It's called Star Wars, okay? That's not good, but you believe that? Why is it that God and the Bible are not cool, not trending on social media? Unless, of course, you're caught preaching in tongues at a Barron Trump for Congress rally. Believe me, I want to be one of the cool dudes, get to go to the parties with gender fluid people hosted by LeBron and a Kardashian. But it doesn't seem like God is trending in these times. It's hard to get some traction with this Bible and God thing. You can't really post God on Instagram, and maybe that's the problem. What do you post? A black void of nothing? How do you get any followers with that? Or maybe you go the other way and post like the Grand Canyon, a beautiful flower, a herd of buffalo at Yellowstone, a mother holding a newborn baby, a puppy. Yeah, that's just about every other person's post, actually. So that wouldn't work. That's the problem. God is so ubiquitous that it doesn't seem like he even exists. It's like air. It's everywhere. You only notice it when you can't breathe. And like God, you only notice it when your life is possibly moments away from the end. You know what they say, there are no atheists in a foxhole. Did I really just say that cliche? Yes, I did. And if God's a hard sell these days, then his great holy book, the Torah, is even more of a challenge. The Torah is quite possibly the foundation of Western civilization, yet it doesn't appear anywhere in the New York Times bestseller list. Although they used to list the Bible. It's weird, like in 1934. I looked it up. Yeah, it was like the #1 book. Maybe the problem, it's hard to get God to do a book tour and promote the Bible. So God, I haven't read the whole book yet. It's kind of a long one. I was having a little trouble turning the page with the scrolly things. But interesting marketing gimmick, the scrolls. So what inspired you, God, to write this book? What's he going to say? What show is he going to go on? Where's he going to sit? He already knows the questions and answers and the exact cancellation date of the show he's on. What's the point? God doesn't do book tours. Sure, the Torah scroll thing is a little out of date, possibly too tactile in the digital age, but it's the friggin' Bible. I mean, how cool is that? It's quite possible that the creator of everything left us with a book, a friggin' book. And the least we can do is crack it open once in a while, don't you think? Even if you don't believe in it. Surely there's some stuff in there that's relevant in your life. I mean, come on. God in his book got us at least to this point, right? There are people that write books who have never created anything, but yet have a book. Many of them don't even write the book themselves. They have other people writing it. I mean, that's every Fox News host. I've got a book. And what have I created? I made a clay ashtray in my art class in 1968. And that same year, I peed my name in snow. That's about it. That's all I've created. And I've got a book. It just seems that everyone wants everything in your face right now, and it doesn't really require any critical thinking. It should all be created and thought out for you already. A guy named God with an Instagram account? Maybe, well, what kind of God would that be anyway? We need a God to challenge us, to search for him, to discover him. I mean, wherever that might be, and along that search, just possibly we shall find ourselves. Yes, I said that. Well, let's start the search by cracking open the book. And to join us on that journey, let's meet our very special guests. Let's go to, she's the creator, yes, and host of the Funny Dance Show on E! She can make dance funny, and now she must make Genesis. If she can get last words, surely she could mine Genesis for yucks. Hey, welcome, Justine Marino. Hello.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. You okay? You ready for some Bible?
I am ready for some Bible. As someone who went to Catholic school my whole life, I am always ready for some Bible. So let's get into it.
Well, let's get it rolling. Okay. He spent more time in the backyards of Hollywood stars than a paparazzi waiting in the bushes on the Britney Spears compound. Welcome, the pool man to the stars.
Dan the pool man at your service.
Arangua, the pool man.
Hey, what's happening, guys and gals?
Yeah, you can see you got a little skeleton back there, Danny.
I do, yeah. We've been waiting so long that he went all the way.
Well, I'm glad you could be here, Danny. All right, let's move on our early morning walks. She's made more birds sing than Simon Cowell on Ladies' Night in a British pub. Let's meet Jackie Venny. Hey there, Jackie. Hey, Jackie. How are you?
Yeah,
You just wrapped up. It's very exciting. And you're back in Tahoe. I always like saying that. You're back in Tahoe. I think Johnny Carson used to say that all the time. You're back in Tahoe. And you live there. You're not actually working there. You actually live in Tahoe, right?
Yeah, yep. It snowed today, and as a desert gal, I really don't understand. I fell in the snow. It was icy, and I think this is my future for the next 6 months.
Wow. Well, that's a hell of a future, and we'll get into that later. He's from the Motor City, but still honors his Jewish great-grandfather's dying wish to never drive a Ford, and he even honors his grandfather's wishes to never drive a Volkswagen. However, he's broken his own father's wishes and has no drive at all. Mr. Sandy Danto.
I'm a big fan of Genesis with Peter Gabriel, but I prefer the Genesis we're going to talk about today.
Oh, you're such a good Jew, Sandy. Okay, when we come back, we will dive into Genesis and what God has in store for man in the Garden of Eden. And it's not mums for the fall. Come back and find out. Welcome back. So last week we left off with Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. Now the Lord God took the man, he placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and guard it. Okay, we talked all about that. And we continue today with today's verse from Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. And the Lord God commanded man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. Wow. Amazing how many times it's said that man is to eat plant life. I mean, this is the 4th time it's mentioned, and we're not even 50 sentences into the Bible. This is nuts. I feel like I'm reading the wall of a hippie-run vegetarian restaurant from the 70s. You know, I thought all that stuff on the walls was made up, but it's right in the Bible. You see, my vegan, progressive, agnostic friends that think the Bible is just for foolish barbecue-eating Southern rednecks? Well, here's something just for you. You know, with all these vegan verses, how on earth did Jewish deli ever happen? I mean, how did we go from carrots and celery sticks with little hummus dip to a 2-foot-high pastrami sandwich and a side of kishkas? Okay, so let's move on. All right. What's interesting here, though, is I got to admit, is the freely eat part. How many things can we say we can freely eat? And I'm not talking money here, although you could always just pluck a fruit from your neighbor's tree when they're not looking. Danny Arangua.
Yes.
Danny Arangua, I'm talking to you, pool man to the stars.
I'm here.
Yes,
I'm here, Scott.
You really are. When you're in these fabulous backyards, really take the fruit, or whatever else your privileged clientele have growing near the pool. Tell me the truth, Danny.
Sometimes I take a peach, an apple, a pear. If it's on a tree, I'll put it in my back pocket or my side pockets, and I got lunch.
You really do that, Danny.
Sometimes I do.
Danny, I'm calling the authorities.
No, don't do it.
Now, if they saw you do that, if they saw you take their fruit, would they be upset?
Probably not. Maybe one particular house, but most people no. No, most people they don't care about their fruit trees.
Really?
No. Yeah, most people they don't care. It's like for you to eat, and it's fruit.
There you go.
And it's in abundance. It's in abundance, so you just eat it.
Justine Marino.
Yes.
Marino. Is there anything on your family menu? You must be Italian with a Marino name, right? You got to be.
I am Italian. I'm Sicilian. I'm a little bit of an embarrassment to my heritage, though, because I'm a vegan. So I don't eat dairy. So I'm a pretty bad Italian at this point in my life. But I will say I have eaten very freely with Sandy many a time. We have freely eaten donuts in the back of a tour bus together, and it was like being in the Garden of Eden, let me tell you.
Well, so there is something about the endless donuts on tour.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Sandy, what's the biggest price you ever paid by straying from God's menu? Come on, Sandy.
Here's the thing, Scott. It's only implied that we're only supposed to eat from the garden. Like, God obviously overlooked the economy here. The hospitality industry just wouldn't thrive at all if every restaurant was a salad bar. I mean, the plexiglass industry would be okay, but the restaurant industry wouldn't be. There's nowhere in the scriptures I can recall it says not to eat people, but seems to be something that's a given. Thou shalt not eat one another, not a commandment, yet pretty common practice.
Sure. I'm not so sure about that, Sandy. There's a lot of tribes in Fiji that do eat people because maybe they don't have a Torah to tell them, you know what? You might not want to. Can't you just freely eat fruit?
Yes, that's what I thought. But then I took my daughter to this apple orchard and they wanted me to pay $17 per bag of apples. And I was like, Genesis chapter 2, verse 6. Emphasis on freely.
Yeah, that probably didn't go very far.
No, I had to pay
this. No, it usually doesn't.
I had to pay the $34 plus tax.
Jackie, you've been sitting there patiently. Should we have to pay for our fruits and vegetables at the market? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys pretty much nailed it in the sense he's saying, yo, you can eat the vegetables for free. You can eat the fruit for free. And you can eat anything else, I guess, but it's not free. It's going to come with a price, whether that be irritable bowel syndrome or, killing the planet with all the meat that you eat. There's going to be a price to it. And, I think that the more that we start to eat meat, we're starting to see is that there's a literal price that we have to pay. And I think that this is actually a pretty cool part of the verses that kind of represents that and shows that. I know we talked about vegetarianism before, but I think it's pretty cool. I like this part.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing with the the idea of freely eating it, because that means that there must be a price for the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. My favorite thing to do when I'm with a group of people is to talk about what vegetable we embody.
Okay.
It's a spirit vegetable.
And what vegetable do you embody, Jackie?
I go back and forth, but I think a green bean.
A green bean, really? A green. Yeah, sure. A green bean? Why a green bean? What is the significance of that?
I don't know. I'm just like kind of long and skinny, but I also eat pizza and will get like little belly, like the little beans inside of it.
So pizza creates the little beans inside of it. I know it does. Danny, what kind of fruit are you?
I like spinach. I eat spinach. A lot of spinach.
That's
I eat a lot
not
of
fruit,
spinach.
Danny. Spinach is
That's right.
Very different. It's a very different game. You gotta.
Right.
a prickly pear. You're a prickly pear, Danny.
I'm a prickly
Actually,
pear guy. I eat prickly pears.
I feel like a prickly pear. That's a good thing for me. I'm a prickly. Sandy, I know what you are.
What am I?
You are a that combination of a tomato and a tamalo. What is it? What do they call that?
Tomatillo?
Tomatillo.
Sure, that's what you are. What? You're upset. You're offended. What did I say? I
Yeah,
called you
it's
like a
very
high
personal
fruit.
thing.
I just never even found a practical application for tomatillo, and I guess that's why that is what I am.
You might be a cherry tomato or maybe a Brussels sprout.
Justine,
I think I'm a potato.
We might as well go around the horn. Justine?
Well,
Yes?
I was going to go with tomato just because I'm Italian, but then maybe a little bit of jalapeno because I've got some spice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're like a spicy cherry.
Nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you,
You're
Jackie.
welcome. You're like
Wow.
salsa.
Oh, that's what I am.
I'm
You're
really
salsa.
glad we're getting some genuine wisdom tonight.
I'm telling you. This is a
Torah
great
study.
game.
We know what vegetables and fruits we are. All right, well, I'm glad I finally learned that I'm a prickly fruit. And let's, when we come back, God warns man in the garden of certain death if he eats from this one tree. Okay, we are back and we're going right into Genesis chapter 2, verse 17. Here we go. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat of it. For on the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Scary. Wow. My mother gave me this exact warning if I dare reach into the fully cooked turkey and grab some stuffing before she served Thanksgiving dinner. I swear she said the exact thing. You surely will die. No one wants to die. Surely. Oh, God. In the garden, man receives endlessly. I mean, it's all good. There's no evil. So really, we can't fully comprehend what good is. Good is. It just is. Everything lives in harmony. But that tree of knowledge of good and evil lurks. And now we've been warned. Last week, when we were discussing the introduction of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, our guest, Brian Moses, said something truly profound. He connected it with that adage, ignorance is bliss, I guess. That's great. As long as we don't go there, to that tree, we're good. But ignorance is bliss, apparently, for so long. There's only so many figs and pomegranates a person can eat, before he gets that itch and wanders over to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A little wandering over there. And now, last I checked, we don't live in the Garden of Eden. And we seem to live in a world where there's plenty of knowledge of good and evil. So it really appears that someone ate from that tree. But yet, we are not dead. We are not dead. We live. Man is still alive. Now, let me check. Yep, we're good, at least for the moment. However, we lived no longer in the garden. No, but in a world filled with unimaginable suffering, death, hatred, Sbarro pizza. The world abounds with sin, and that's just in this house. However, it also abounds with good. So what's up? What died? We didn't die in the garden, but did our innocence die? If I attended a college of the tree of knowledge of good and evil and earned a degree in it, I would think that would be pretty impressive, right? But not here, not standing in the Garden of Eden. One good bite of that fruit of this tree, and it's curtains. Ah, curtains. Maybe that's the key. Curtains shut out the light. They keep the outside world from peering in and leave you to fend in your own stench. Death here must be like curtains, thick curtains that keep us from receiving the divine light of God. It's a death of sorts, the death of one dimension, a place where man endlessly receives God's love and bounty to instantly being reborn into his earthly chains. But why? Let's look at it this way. You're a magnificent flower in the Garden of Eden among millions of others, and yet you have no idea how beautiful you are. It's kind of a waste in a sense. But if you, as this flower, is reborn in our often tragic earthly reality, you know, surviving storms, drought, horrible winds, animals stepping on you, and then despite all that, you survive to blossom into a spectacular rose, and then to have other creations marvel at your beauty. Well, that's a whole other existence. Yes, the tree of knowledge of good and evil marks a death, but it also marks a rebirth into our school of earthly existence. So perhaps our purpose here is to somehow find a way back to the garden, to somehow find a way to open those curtains and let God's love once again fully shine upon our faces. And this time in the garden, we get out of it more than just a really good tan. Jackie is someone who has actually lived in the Garden of Eden and may still live there. What exactly is God afraid of if we eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? You would think he would want us to have that knowledge. What can you tell us, Jackie, from the front lines?
It kind of seems like he wants us to eat it in this sense, because how could you have all these amazing trees, and of course back then when God's telling you it's the only thing you can eat, you're only going to eat those trees, and then there's one tree that you can't eat from? Why wouldn't he just make it be like a rock? Can't eat. You know, instead he makes it be a tree, disguised like everything else that we can eat. It kind of seems like he wants us to eat it. It kind of seems like he just put it there so he could be like, let's see. And he says, don't do it. You can have anything you want in this room, he says to the children, but you can't have this one thing. Of course, we're all going to go to the one thing that we can't have. It's human nature.
Ah. It's human nature. Justine.
Yes.
Is the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil just a very rotten pear dangling? And all that God's warning us about is just to be careful that we don't eat rancid fruit? Is that all it is? Or am I just ridiculous?
I think it's more than that. I think that God, when he created man, he gave us free will, and this was a test of giving us control, and he warned us. He's like, you're not going to like it. You're going to realize you're naked and not like it and cover yourselves with leaves. And we did it anyway. So I really think that it wasn't just a rancid fruit warning. I think it was, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a test, but really just a moment for us to make a decision on our own and use our free will that God gave to us.
Wow. What would you prefer, Danny? Being in the Garden of Eden or being in the garden of one of your pool clients, Leonardo DiCaprio?
That's pretty funny.
Come on, you're the pool man to the stars.
You mean his pool?
You've been in some of these gardens of Eden.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. Are you asking me like what I think he meant by, to not eat the fruit? To not eat the fruit?
Don't think about it. Don't think. Just respond. You could do it.
All right.
Come on. You've been in these gardens, Danny. You've been in these gardens.
Yeah.
What do they do for you?
They're beautiful. You just look at them and they're amazing. I think that it meant that, he's testing our faith. Maybe when we eat the fruit, our souls die. Maybe our souls die if we eat the fruit. Maybe it's,
but if our souls die, Danny, man still continued. Man's still here.
With dead souls.
We were told we were going to die, and we did it anyway, and somehow we're still here. So what do you think's going on, Danny?
Maybe we're soulless. We're walking around without souls because we ate the fruit, and we're not supposed to.
Sandy, could we all actually be dead right now? Is that what's going on, Sandy? Are you a zombie, Sandy? Is that what's happening? Did we die in the garden?
I think that as we read any scripture, it's about having the answers explicitly spelled out for us right there on the page. It's about reading between the lines. It's about finding the answers through our own journeys with the guidance of the words. And we're not meant to taste the fruit. We're meant what the fruit tastes like. And if we were just given the answers, then that's it. Nothing else. It's blank after that. We've gotten all there is to live for, and there's just nothing beyond. So that's why if you eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you figure out what there is in life, and there's no reason to continue living.
It's like the ultimate.
Once my mom let me watch the end of Titanic when I was like 6 years old, and I really wish she didn't.
I feel that.
So the Titanic was your tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Wow, Titanic did you in, huh? Yeah, you can never recover from that. It's like a death. It's like a death. You just die right after.
No, I hate cold water.
Well, you survived it, okay? You survived the Titanic. You're here talking.
They were all blue.
Yeah, that tree of knowledge of good and evil can get pretty heavy sometimes, man. There's a lot of blue people floating on the water. Oh, it's bad. Oh, it's bad. Give me that pond of locust flowers or whatever they're called. I gotta float on that for a while. Oh, but we didn't. And when we come back, we'll find out more of what's going on at the garden. Okay, let's get to it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. And the Lord God said, "It is not good that man is alone." What? Whoa. Are we really that obvious? Even when we're luxuriating in beds of flowers? You can't hide loneliness? You could see the greatest sunset. And the first thing you want to say is, Are you looking at that? Are you looking at that? And then, of course, the next thing is, I got to get a selfie. I got to share this on Instagram. That's before you even contemplate the significance of what you're experiencing. Sharing with others is quite possibly man and God's greatest desire. I wonder if Mark Zuckerberg spent time on this first. But enough of me. Let's get to the panel. Sandy, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, I saw the hat. Sandy, you work alone on stage as a comedian, so I feel secure in asking you this. Does man know he's alone in the garden? Or does only God know he's alone?
I think that only God knows. And that's why God created mankind, a populous mankind, because my theory is that God needs an audience. God is the first comedian. I mean, he designed orangutan butts and pugs. And I'm not sure which came first, but one might be a callback to the other. God needed an audience to see this and laugh at it. And like most bigger name comics I've worked with, God needed an assistant to like dictate joke ideas, pack merchandise bags, pick up Playboy Playmates from the airport. God's such a comic.
Danny, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Any of the stars you see when doing their pulls, they have seemingly everything. But are some actually lonely, Danny, in the garden?
Oh, who is lonely? They seem to
I
be.
want names, Danny. I want names.
Okay, names. Okay. Well, I don't
You
want
don't
to get
have
in
to-
trouble.
you don't have
I can get in trouble.
I can't.
Okay. Actually, speaking of the Titanic, I do Danny Nucci's pool. He's the guy. He's the Leonardo DiCaprio's sidekick in the Titanic. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, Danny. He's a really cool guy. Speaking of the Titanic. Oh man.
Wow. Justine, is God alone without man? Do you think really is God alone without man? And is man ultimately alone without God?
Well, I mean, as an only child, this whole question is very triggering. I think that God, I mean, that's a tough one because I think God is definitely never, I mean, man is never alone because man is created in God's image. I feel like God is always with man. But to Sandy's point, like he brings up a good point. Like he needed someone, maybe God needed someone to sell his merch and stuff. So like, I kind of see that. Or maybe God was just lonely himself and created man as a companion to bounce ideas off of. And if I was God, I would probably create some little dude to like do stuff for me and hang out in a garden. Tell him not to eat fruit. I don't know if God is lonely. I mean, God's in everything. So I don't think God's lonely necessarily now, but was he lonely enough to create the universe? Maybe.
I think it's a good point. I think you could get pretty lonely out in that great dark black void.
He's not saying like, let's get you a friend. He's saying helpmate. Am I reading that correctly? He's saying, let's get you a helpmate?
Yeah, bring that verse up again. Craig, can you bring the verse up again?
Like a captain and a first mate or something like that.
Yeah, wow, yeah, it worked too. And the Lord God said, it is not good that man is alone. I shall make him a helpmate opposite him. Well,
Yeah,
jump ahead because we're going to talk about that part. Right now, we're just talking about being alone because God notices that man is alone. He's very sensitive to that, Jackie. Like, how would he be? That's the very first thing he notices about man.
It reminds me of this one summer in 8th grade where I just stayed in my room the whole time and watched videos on YouTube. And my mom would like peek her head in every now and then and be like, do you want to go outside or meet the neighbor? And I was like, no. So I feel like, you know, these parenting figures of ours or God have this sense that, you know, more comes from this co-creation of hanging out with other people. And I think man left to his own devices maybe wouldn't always go and co-create with other people. But once we're forced to, I think you get like double the energy towards whatever problem or anything that you're looking at.
Totally agree. I mean, if we just look at the show Full House, that is a perfect example of all of this. They just keep moving people in, and the energy just keeps growing, and all their problems get solved because it's Full House.
You're watching that movie, that show, and you're like, what is this about? And you're like explaining it to someone, and they're like, oh, this doesn't seem very good. And then you think, and you're like, it's not very good, but somehow it's super entertaining. Like, I can't stop. Like, I just keep jumping from next scene to next scene. And it has nothing to do with the great plot or the great acting. It just has something to do with the different amount of people and energy being introduced.
Exactly. I also just feel like the Garden of Eden as a whole, to put it in the terms of the Olsen twins on Full House, Michelle Tanner, the Garden of Eden as a whole is one big you got it, dude, except for the tree. The fruit on the tree is you're in big trouble, mister. That's what it is.
Or the fruit is how rude.
Exactly.
How rude.
Oh my God.
How rude.
We're created in God's image and likeness. And so it's possible God was just lonely. And he was projecting that onto his creations. Maybe God, after the 7 days of creation, is exhausted. It's a lot to do in 7 days. And
6 days. 6 days.
6 days. Well, the rest is a creation as far as I'm concerned. Probably the most. Don't dismiss rest. Do not dismiss rest as a creation.
All right. Well, very good. And we move on. We move on to where I actually throw to commercial. Yes. Upon your return from commercial break, we will see what God feels man needs to cure his loneliness. We'll be right back. Okay, continuing with Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. And the Lord God said, "It is not good that man is alone." And now the next part of that verse, "I shall make him a helpmate opposite him." Really? A helpmate opposite him. Why is the solution to man's loneliness is for God to create an opposite man? Why not just give him a golden retriever and call it a day? And why an opposite? Why not a duplicate to go with man? What can an opposite provide to the other person that a duplicate can't? I want to hang out with one of my buddies and talk football, watch football, play football. I want to shoot guns. I want to drive tanks all day. I want to go on a Patagonia Jeep tour with the boys. Why do I need an opposite? I'm good. Justine, I'm talking to you. You live in West Hollywood. This must resonate in some way. Justine, why do we need opposites to cure loneliness?
Well, I feel like, as a helpmate myself, I feel like God had to create an opposite, because if he just created a duplicate, man would just see himself, and then, we're all created in God's image. So I feel like God had to create an opposite so that man could see the spectrum of God's creative powers. And also, if he just created a duplicate, man might get confused and think that he's God if he's seeing himself everywhere. So I feel like an opposite also, you don't want two of the same thing. It's too much, It's like, I feel like also, in addition to being a comic, God was a little bit of a sitcom writer as well. And he knew that opposites make for the best comedies, right? I mean, The Odd Couple, other ones that are escaping me right now. But you guys know what I'm saying. So God was like, I'm going to give man a helpmate, AKA woman, because also I don't want everyone to be so hairy on this planet. I'm going to give one person a little bit of a break and give one person an opportunity to wear a bright lip if they want to. So I feel like God had to create like a hot less hairy version of, his likeness for
less hair.
What's that?
Oh, I just didn't know about the less hairy part.
I know I'm Italian, so I've had to laser to get less hairy, but still, I think I'm probably still a hair.
Appear ultimately like an opposite.
Exactly.
You had hair removed, so you could be an opposite.
Exactly.
Well, so this opposite thing, there's something to it. Sandy, has your wife ever been on a Patagonian Jeep tour with you?
We've never been on a Patagonian Jeep tour, but we have been dropped off in a Jeep at the Patagonia store. At the mall.
And did she take as much joy out of that as you did?
As much as I would love to go to Patagonia in South America, Argentina, I believe it's in, I enjoy a nice pair of fleece bottoms that are ethically sourced.
Very nice. Danny, what's this thing? Why do we need opposites? I mean, can't you get along with, your adorable clone, Danny? I feel the show coming.
If you think about it, I mean, opposites attract, and if we just had ourselves, and we were just ourselves, we would be bored of ourselves. We need the opposite to bring the best out in us. I mean, we have to have the opposite. It just makes sense.
A part of me feels like God just made the opposite parts so we could have babies.
Right?
Oh boy! So that's what that whole thing's about, really? So when people say, hey, opposites attract, like what Danny just said, right? It's really just like, come on, they don't really attract, but this is our way of rationalizing why we're together and we're physically attracted. The opposites don't really attract. I mean, seriously, if they really attracted right now, then I would be like yearning to hang out with a white supremacist. I mean, that would be an opposite of me. But I don't yearn. I'm not looking for a white supremacist. That's an opposite. I mean, come on. That's just said, that's just a bunch of, opposites attract. I think Jackie's onto something. I think it's God's little trick just to get us to mate and to fill the world with people. More audience for God.
I was just thinking, and maybe funniness aside, there is a beautiful oppositeness that comes from the masculine energy and the feminine energy, but I think all of us possess them equally.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be a man to be masculine, and you don't need to be a female to be feminine. But the opposite of the two energies, when they come together, are very beautiful, and the puzzle pieces that they are, and they come together to create a very beautiful picture of humanity, and we really equally need both.
I agree. That sounds good.
Yeah, that was deep and beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Jackie.
Yeah. Very nice, Jackie.
I'm actually, I might sleep with my wife after that. Did you hear that? I was talking about other people.
You're inspiring procreation.
Oh my gosh. I didn't really say that, did I? In a
You did.
I did. I actually. Anything for a laugh. Sandy, you know about that. Oh, well, that really was beautiful. It's pretty amazing that we live in an era where you could embrace your feminine energy and your male energy and not be burnt at the stake for it, So to find the balance where we can do that, but also not throw out that thing that you described so well. I guess that's what we're kind of, hope for, that somehow it all could coexist, So here we are at the end of our show. And when we come back, we'll find out what we all learned from tonight. and we are at the final segment, and this is the segment where we go around all the guests and we figure out what did we learn? What did we learn tonight? And we'll start with Mr. Sandy Danto. Sandy, we talked about a lot of things. What did you learn from tonight's discussion?
I learned that cannibalism is cool with God if you're not a literal interpreter of the Torah, and that God, like most comics, needs devoted followers, has a podcast, and also, like most comics, has a God complex.
Oh, well, I'm glad the discussion really worked for you this time, Sandy. That's that's wonderful. Danny, you've been put in this kind of crazy television show. What did you learn from tonight's discussion?
Well, I think I learned that it's okay to eat the forbidden fruit, and you're going to be okay. And I learned that, and I learned about the feminine energy and the masculine energy, and they combine them together. And it's a beautiful thing. I learned that. And hey, the Torah is a beautiful thing, and people are beautiful. That's what I learned.
I love it, Danny. I love it. Justine Marino. I know. Don't talk about Full House. I know that's what you're doing. Do not mention Full House. But if you have to, you own this 15 seconds.
I didn't learn anything about that because I already knew all there is to know about Full House. I learned that the Old Testament and the Torah supports veganism. So now I am just that much firmer in my devotion to not eating animals or animal products. And I also just thought what Jackie said about the masculine and feminine energy was very poignant and beautiful. So I will take that with me.
Very nice. Very nice. Jackie, what do you think? What did you learn?
I learned that Scott's energy embodies the fruit of a cacti. And I think it's very profound.
So I am a prickly pear. Oh, boy.
I've
been outed, Sandy. You were supposed to protect me from this. We had a deal.
You're prickly on the outside, but you're sweet and tender on the inside.
Oh, I don't want to say that. Well, I learned that it's time to wrap up the show because we've kept these people for hours. So thank you. Come back next week. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, man. Awesome.
Wonderful
So fun.